What I hear most was we don't have much time.
Yeah,
And I was like, we need at least an hour. And they
right.
say, no, we don't have time. So yeah, I think that people need to make the time, right, to do this stuff.
It's so important to take the time.
Yeah.
You create time by making a more efficient workforce. Welcome back, everyone, to the Dairy Science Digest. This is a podcast designed to bring the Journal of Dairy Science straight to the ears of dairy producers. I'm Reagan Bluel from the University of Missouri Dairy Team, and today our guest comes from Michigan State Veterinary Medicine in East Lansing. Dr. Zelmar Rodriguez is a large animal veterinarian with an assistant professor who has dedicated his integrated research and extension programs on developing management strategies for disease control and milk quality for your herd. So this publication of topic was quite timely because our commodity group, Missouri Dairy, had been polling our producers here in the state. And one of the top 3 concerns is on dairymen's mind in the state of Missouri is labor. And the labor churn in our industry has been directly correlated with training. So when I saw Doc's paper titled The Impact of Training Dairy Farm Personnel on Milk Routine Compliance, Udder Health, and Milk Quality, I immediately reached out because he and his team partnered with DeLaval to train 112 milkers on 16 operations in Michigan and Ohio. And I'm so eager for you to hear the results of how this worked out. So, Dr. Rodriguez, welcome to Dairy Science Digest. Thank you for taking time, taking a break from your adventure to Uruguay to talk with us today. Could you please introduce yourself to the crowd a bit?
Yes, hi Reagan. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm a DVM originally from Uruguay. I did my PhD at the University of Minnesota, and now I'm an assistant professor at Michigan State University, working mostly on milk quality. I also teach epidemiology for vet students and grad students. But yeah, I'm very glad to have this integrated extension and research approach that so I can work on a very applied research is great for me.
Well, and we all love applied research listeners on this program because in the end, these are the guys that are boots on the ground every single day. And so before we get into the results, let's talk about the experimental design. Could you talk about what exactly was the aim of this particular training project?
Yeah, sure. So what we wanted, what we were interested in was to measure the impact of training of farm personnel on the milking routine. And we measure that at 3 different levels. The immediate learning, usually evaluations of trainings, they focus on the immediate learning. But then we went a step further. We evaluate the impact at the parlor on behavioral changes. And then at the farm level, through productivity and other health. And we enrolled, as you say, 16 dairy farms, and we visit the farms. We did a parlor evaluation. We collect information on productivity, other health, taking notes of what things we could potentially improve. And then based on that evaluation, we went the next day and we did a training.
I saw in the paper when you were doing your initial review that you took some photographs of some of the employees. Can you talk
Right.
about how you utilize that to help engage the producers the following day?
Right. I took some pictures of the procedure and then I put them in the presentation for them so they can actually visualize their farm, their parlor, and then they can relate better to the concepts. It may affect the learning.
Absolutely. I'm such a visual learner. I suspect everybody could benefit from that.
Yeah, it's incredible the difference between employees, the learning process between them. In the description, I mentioned that some of them are very highly educated, some others are not. So, in any group that you teach, in a cohort, you have people with more or less knowledge on the topic, but it's particularly challenging for educators of this type of cohort because the gap is huge. So yeah, sometimes you need to decide if you leave some of them behind or you go slower with everyone.
Sure.
That is a tough choice, right? But yeah, you need to spend time and try to have everyone understand the concept.
So for this project, did you wind up keeping everybody in one group, one training, or did you break it apart based on levels of learning or knowledge?
No, we break them apart by language.
I see.
Yeah, we did trainings for English speakers and Spanish speakers separately,
Mhm.
but not necessarily about knowledge. The training was very focused on, it had two big sections. The first part was on pathogenesis, explaining to the workers what is mastitis, what type of pathogens are, mostly on the environmental and on contagious pathogens. And then we moved toward each of the steps. We covered essentially the reasons and the importance of following each of the steps of the milking process. And then 21 days later, we measure the parlor efficiency and productivity and other health parameters.
Well, and I think it's important if we could backtrack just a little bit. You were talking about how you did your pre-parlor assessment the day before the
Yes.
training and then kind of customized your training to that. And so I think this resonates and is important to recognize that I'd say most of the states out there that if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you have an extension agent that's dedicated to dairy in your state, and so maybe this is a training program that your extension agent could help you find. But let's talk about where did you find the resources to use to customize that information?
Yes. Well, we did the training based on the NMC recommendations of the 10 points plan.
Yeah, I think people kind of forget about the National Mastitis Council's
Mhm.
recommendations on how to milk a cow. And guys, this is all
Right.
science-based information. There's no opinion here, and it's a fantastic website, nmconline.org. And I'll go ahead and put a clickable link to that 10-point plan that he's referring to because it's great information. So if you don't want to invite a third-party extension agent or DeLaval agent out to your place, maybe perhaps you can review this website and implement some of these training programs on your farm too. Very good. And so tell me a little bit about the participants that you had surveyed in the 16 farm grouping.
Yes, so we enrolled the 16 farms. We had over 150 employees. The median size of the farms was 1,100 cows. And we got a large participation in the test. So the training, we did a pre and post training evaluation. So we asked workers a few set of questions, and after the training, we asked them the same question. This was to have a baseline of their knowledge and how much they learned during the training. The participants were mostly males, 82% of them were male, 74% were Spanish speakers. Most of them had less than 1 year of experience with a median tenure of 9 months. And this makes sense on other surveys out there of the daily workers nowadays.
For sure. Reflective. And the smallest farm was 280 cows, right? And so, regardless of what
Right.
your farm size is, training is relevant, whether you're milking 200 cows or 20,000 cows, making sure those employees feel knowledgeable about the effort that they're trying to make is incredibly important. I'm just jumping right into the results. One statement that you made in the discussion was that it encouraged a group discussion. And I think that's so important because so many times employees come in and they clock in, they do the job, and they're doing what they're told. I assume that every single one of these farms had some sort of training program, but we all drift a little. And I think as you emphasize that you're talking about that pathogenesis and how that milking efficiency can change based on their actions, empowered them. And you saw that in the Likert scale. Let's talk a little bit about as they took that post survey, what did they like taking this training session?
Yes, they were grateful of having someone coming to the farm, dedicating time to talk to them and having these discussions. It's always at the beginning, it takes some time to connect, but eventually through some jokes and discussions, they
Yeah.
connect and that helps a lot so they feel that they are in a safe environment
Sure.
to ask questions. That is the most difficult part at the beginning. But once they are comfortable, yeah, so they start to ask all those questions that they had for so long,
Sure. Yeah.
and that helps a lot. Yeah.
So I noticed some of the herds, the owner manager was present, some of them they weren't. After you've done this 16 times, for the listeners, would you recommend to have that leadership position present, or do you think there would be more open dialogue without it?
Well, one of the enrollment criteria was that the manager or the owner were there. And it's true, yes, that a few of them had to leave, but they left someone with some upper level decision-making person for the discussions.
Hmm.
It is essential to have this person in there, especially because at some point workers start to have different point of view on how those procedures are, and the educator cannot take that decision for them, right?
Hmm.
Something that I noticed that is what workers do with the abnormal milk cases. They, in general, and this happened in many farms, they were not clear what to do, right? So
Yeah,
what we do with a case with which has just a abnormal milk but is mild versus another cow which is very evident that has clinical mastitis. They were unsure what to do. Some of
sure.
them are like, well, let's mark the cow and see later. Some of them say, let's see the cow in the next shift, but didn't mark them.
Hmm.
So there were different opinions, and the owner or the manager needs to be there and say, okay, this is
This
what
is
we
what
all
it
have to
is.
do.
Yeah,
Right,
right.
right.
Good. Well, and I saw that several of the people that were involved in the training, it was only 40%, but they were not labeled as milkers. So could you talk a little bit about the importance of cross training and how that might have impacted your results?
Right. Yes, at the beginning, we were not sure if we should only train the milking technicians or everyone. But then we figured out very quickly that it's better to train everyone in the farm because there are people that are not self-defined as milking technicians. They do other activities in the farm, but they cover shifts. And if you focus the training only on those that only milk cows, you are missing a big part of the workers that also do that task.
For sure. Do you think that would that have played any role in the pre-test level of knowledge? I sure was. Were you surprised to see the 49.3% overall knowledge ranking there in the pre-test?
Yeah, it's quite low, right?
I thought so, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but we could, after the training, the score jump up to 67%.
Yes.
But still is not. I personally think is not enough.
Mhm.
I think that producers need to have this discussion to think what is the standard that they expect in terms of knowledge for their workers. As you mentioned before, the turnover is really important. We observe a turnover from 0 to 125, so over
Mm.
100%, right?
Mm.
So with a median of 33%. So that means that you are having new employees all the time with a very short tenure, and yeah, you need to train them, right?
Sure.
And it's expected to have low baseline knowledge, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, producers need to decide what is acceptable for them, and then try to pursue those objectives with frequent training.
Sure. Yeah. So we touched on that nearly 20-point swing in overall knowledge gained, but let's talk a little bit about some of the other results. What could you tell us a little bit about the average preparation time and how that lag time changed?
Yes, let's define the lag time is the time between the tactile contact of the teeth up to the unit attachment, right? So yeah, the average preparation lag time was reduced by 32 seconds. But what is most important, the percentage of the adequate preparation lag time moved from 30% to 50%, right? We define the adequate preparation lag time between 1 minute and 2 minutes.
Mhm.
So most of the cows fall after 2 minutes. So we're too long, would affect the parlor performance.
Sure.
So it was reduced by 30 seconds. That was good.
Well, and you certainly saw it in your milk out time, total reduction in milk out of 25 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, guys, but if that's more efficient over several cows, several turns, that can really add up. And additionally, talk a little bit about the observation of the time difference between attachment versus exiting.
Yes, there was a reduction on the time that cows are being milked during the units on to beginning of exit of 43 seconds. So, and this was without affecting the operator's performance. So the time that workers dedicated to each of the tasks remained the same, just that they were more efficient. They spent less time milking those cows, and that made the flow better.
And it didn't take anything, just a little bit of communication and probably some pizza, and all of a sudden the parlor performs better.
Right,
I think the most powerful statement that I read in the entire article, you were doing your trainings April through September. And we
right.
all know about bulk tank somatic cell count, April through September. Tell me a little bit about that seasonal effect in contrast to your training.
Right. We saw a steady increase, very small, but an increase in somatic cell score on average during the 60 days before the intervention. But then after the intervention, what we observed was a halt in that increase and eventually start to decline the somatic cell score. It took from the intervention until start to decline that somatic cell score like 10 days, 2 weeks, which makes sense because it's not immediate. Every time that we do this milking procedure is to minimize the new intramammary infections, right? We are not trying to cure cows. So it takes some time to improve that milk quality and decline the somatic cell score.
Sure, but you saw the halted climb. That's exciting. I really
Yes.
like that. And so, but tell me about the clinical mastitis observation. What happened after training on those numbers?
Yes, the next day of the training, we observed a peak of clinical mastitis and then a follow-up peak. So essentially, there was way more identifications of clinical mastitis during the first week after the training. And when I saw those results, I was scared. I say, oops, what did I do?
No, no,
Um,
yeah.
right. But then analyzing the data, I quickly realized that so workers started to do a really good job identifying those clinical
Cool.
mastitis cases, segregating them. So, and that is a lot of what we discussed during the training. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. It's
So
great.
they're engaged. Yeah.
Yes, they are engaged. And we discussed a lot also about during the first stripping that dedicating the time to actually see the milk from the first stripping
Mm-hmm.
because during the first evaluation, I saw that sometimes, they need to be fast and they miss cows with
Mm-hmm.
evident clinical mastitis.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they did a really good job identifying those cases, segregating them, which also reduce the pressure of transmission, right?
Sure.
That is one of the key of the training, the clinical mastitis identification for sure,
That's awesome. It all works in concert,
right?
and impacts the overall good. Well, one question that I had that I forgot to kind of delve into it. What exactly is the DeLaval service called PASS? What does that mean?
Yes, the PASS is an acronym for Parlor Analysis and Simulation Service. It's a device that DeLaval has in which we measure the how much time take each worker to perform each of the tasks during the milking process. That help us a lot to have an idea of the efficiency, to help to evaluate the time that workers expend doing each of the tasks. And we use it and it works great. It's like a tablet in which you follow the personnel. You need to tell the software how many cows are milked, how many workers. You need to identify each of the workers.
Mm,
It can be with a color band in the arm or something like that.
mhm.
And then you can choose each of the activities that the workers are doing, and that include idle time. If they are not doing nothing at some point, you can also include that. And then at the end of the milking or the time that you set, you have a good summary of how much time workers expend on each task. And that helps a lot.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. It's very convenient, it's easy to use, and it helps to figure out what areas you can help them to be more efficient.
interesting. Very good. I had a producer and he utilizes a program called Cattle Care,
Mhm.
and it's focused on artificial intelligence or AI to, it sounds like very similar, where
Interesting.
it just quantifies exactly what's happening there in the chore, but it'll send a text message to him
Oh,
specifically on different things that he has identified that he wants to know right away. Like, for example,
right.
if a milker raises his hand, you know, to slap or hurt or harm a cow, then that would notify him that, hey, this is some aggressive behavior that's happening. And then it'll summarize all of the performance metrics over certain windows of time. So then you can make goals and track. It's amazing what technology does to help us do our job more efficiently
Yeah.
and be present even when you can't be present. And so
Yeah,
does it,
and making the life of producers easier, right?
yeah, that's important. So this iPad, was it mounted somewhere or how did you manage it?
Oh, it's something that you hold
Okay,
during the whole period, yeah.
I see. Well, one of my favorite questions to ask everybody that I interview is, you know, if there was one thing out of this informative research project that you really want boots on the ground dairy producers to gain from this project, what might that be?
Well, there are many, but I would say train your farm personnel is worth it. Do it frequently. Once that you have someone that knows what happened in your farm, it will be easier over time because it's more like follow up. Workers need to this follow up because we all cut corners, right? And it's not on purpose, but it's good for them to refresh concepts and also for the new employees. And also dedicate time. You don't necessarily need every time to bring someone from outside. Maybe the manager or the owner can dedicate time to talk with workers, talk about the milking procedure or other protocols, maybe not related to milk quality or good health, but other activities in the farm. You, Reagan, mentioned the 10 points from the NMC. That is great information, so it's super friendly to read, but there are plenty of information that actually producers and managers can use to discuss with workers. Workers have questions, but for some reason there is no time or they are shy to ask.
Intimidated, yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. It's important to generate these discussions so everyone can be on the same page.
That's awesome. Well, Zelmar, this has been a great discussion, and I want to thank you so much for your time while you're away in Uruguay at a large animal veterinarian conference. Listeners, I applaud you for taking time out of your day today also to learn about how training your employees can have a direct impact on your bottom line. So I've really enjoyed our conversation, and this has been the December edition of the Dairy Science Digest, which is a monthly podcast project designed to bring the Journal of Dairy Science straight to your ears. We only highlight peer-reviewed research articles that are actively in press because this is sound science that you can base your management decisions around and provided to you by your University of Missouri Dairy team. So please take the time to like, share, and subscribe to get future editions straight to your cell phone. This is Reagan Bluel with the Dairy Science Digest, and I hope you have a great day.